We've been waiting for this free agency news. We didn't know when it was going to happen, but it did happen. And the free agent you were waiting for to re-sign with the Philadelphia 76ers, Kyle Lowry, back for the 20th season in the NBA, this time again with his hometown team. Welcome to the PHLY Sixers Emergency Podcast presented by Rothman Orthopedics. Visit rothmanortho.com/PHLY. Kyle Newbeck, Devon Givens with you, Andrew Frazier producing. Well, Kyle, this is the one, man. It wasn't Quentin Grimes. We weren't worried about him. We were worried about if Kyle Lowry was coming back.
Not the guard signing emergency pod we were hoping for, Devon. I do think we've been expecting this, right? The VJ taking number 77, which we'll reiterate is just an absolute travesty. There have been some signs from videos. I believe Jared McCain actually posted a video recently that his number, Kyle Lowry's number, was in the locker room on one of the stalls still. So, and it just been kind of accepted that Lowry would be back. Whether we agree with him being back is another story, right? And so, in a vacuum, you can't get super mad about Lowry or like a guy who's an end of the bench, grizzled veteran. You have all these young guards, Maxey, McCain, Edgecombe, even to a lesser extent, Quentin Grimes, and having a guy who's been to the top of the mountain, who's got, super high basketball IQ, blah, blah, like all that is all well and good. You can't burn multiple roster spots on guards, on a guard-heavy team, number one, on guards that you don't want to play, right? Like, I love the sentimentality. I love the veteran wisdom and all that stuff. But when Eric Gordon comes back, and the reason that he came back is a result of you're basically just doing cap manipulation, right? You're saying, hey, opt out and take another deal so we can have you count for less against the cap than your player option would. Once that happens, you can't then also bring back Kyle Lowry. Like, it makes no sense. And I'm really worried, even though maybe I shouldn't be, that Nick Nurse is going to continue to play this guy, right? We've talked about it 100 times. It's one of his guys that he won a title with, that he loves, that he reveres, that he values on many different fronts. And I just don't know how you look at how he's used Lowry, which is too much relative to what he has left to give. You can't come away with any other conclusion other than he's probably still going to try to get him on the floor. And we've gone through this problem with multiple players and multiple coaching staffs here, right? Like Darryl leaving someone like a DeAndre Jordan or a Paul Millsap on the roster, and then Doc Rivers, the previous head coach, overplaying that guy at the expense of young players. I would hope that the guys are high caliber enough in the backcourt that they don't run into the same problem. But I hate how many spots on this roster right now in a league that is increasingly more about depth, increasingly more about, how many guys you can shuffle in and out, just using these roster spots on guys you don't want to play. I don't get it. I don't understand it.
Yeah, so I think in this case, honestly, if everyone's healthy, there's absolutely no reason for Nick Nurse to play Kyle Lowry over any of the four that you mentioned. And if we go back to some of the things that Nick Nurse talked about when he did play Kyle Lowry, those extended minutes, starting in a lot of those games as well, it's because of the players that weren't available. So now that you have this four-guard lineup, potentially with Quentin Grimes coming back, Eric Gordon, and now Kyle Lowry on the back end, that's your backcourt rotation of the six. There's absolutely no reason, as you said. So I would have to think that Nick Nurse knows that, especially if he's a man of his word of what he was saying as to why he was actually playing Kyle Lowry those minutes before. If they are healthy, I don't expect to see Kyle Lowry much, if at all, out there on the floor. Sure, when a guy misses some time and he may have to go a little bit deeper into the bench, then maybe he will lean on Lowry for a few minutes. But I don't think this is just going to be one of those deals where, hey, I gotta scratch this itch of getting my guy in the game and give him an opportunity. How do you answer to that? if that's the case, especially when you have four younger guys who are playing, whether they're playing well or not. We would suspect that they are, for you to give the call to Kyle Lowry at that point. So I don't look at it that way. Part of the other thing that you said with giving guys roster spots, this was the issue though for last summer when it was talked about, you and Derek specifically, of the 2-year deals to Drummond and Gordon, where they have the opportunity, even as veterans, I get it, but they have the opportunity to determine their fate on that second year of opting in. And Eric Gordon opted out, but it was a favor knowing that he was going to be back on a 1-year deal. So there you kind of put yourself in that bind. You either bring him back at that number and mess up your cap situation where you're 1 million a little bit more into the cap, or an agreement where he does in fact opt out, but takes the deal, gets a little bit more money to shave $1 million off, so it doesn't impact your salary cap situation. So that's where the trouble part comes into play of what you gave last summer, and we talked about this last week, of what you gave last summer, also determining how things are going to go this summer, where it messes up with the numbers game that you have to go around with Eric Gordon and now Kyle Lowry as part of 2 players on your roster that are going to fill roster spots. This is not just a James Jones piece. James Johnson piece for the Pacers. This is James Johnson plus, where you have 2 players that probably are not going to play, but they're filling roster spots for you where they shouldn't be on this particular group.
Well, and let's be clear here, Devon. At least Eric Gordon last year did something that was like, this guy still has a verifiable NBA skill, right? Maybe we don't want to see Eric Gordon play in the rotation, but he shot 40+% from 3. It was on a bad team. It wasn't super meaningful, all that. But you could, if Nick Nurse needs to look down the bench and say, I need a shooter, I need shooting on the floor, you can make the argument that Eric Gordon should get some bench minutes, deep bench minutes, but some bench minutes.
And as a specialist that he is, right.
Right. Kyle Lowry shot 35% from the field last year. And look, he's had an incredible career, right? 6-time All-Star, won a title, like a player who I really enjoyed watching at his peak. But he's small and he can't move anymore. And so that, you just can't play guys like that. It's impossible to put a guy like that on the floor. So again, if it was just him, if he was like their Udonis Haslem, and it's like he's a coach on the end of the bench, he's just a guy who's seen it all and can pass on, that's one thing. But you have him, you have Gordon, you have Andre Drummond, who they're actively trying to get rid of his contract,
right,
and have been the whole offseason, right? Like they don't want to play Andre Drummond in an ideal world, right? So you effectively have 3 roster spots that are just being wasted. Now, maybe Drummond's a little bit younger, had a good year the year before last. Maybe you just say, all right, at least in his case, maybe he's got a bounce back year. He had the toe issue throughout the season. Maybe a little optimism there. But I don't know how you can make any argument that Lowry can get on the floor for this team, right? That's what makes it so tough for me.
I don't think he's going to get on the floor. This was one of those get the 20th year, comfort level being home, comfort level of the coach, be that veteran on the bench, to your point of Udonis Haslem, and make sure you continue to help and coach and mentor and give a lot of wisdom to Jared McCain, even VJ Edgecombe in this case. It doesn't just have to be Eric Gordon helping out with VJ Edgecombe. It could also be Kyle Lowry. So he's going to be that extension of basically an assistant coach, I'm thinking. So I'm going the other way, where trying to make sure you don't have to get too worked up about it, of where we are. But yes, I know the big piece of it is you're affecting how the entire roster looks by putting 2 players that basically are not going to play, one as a specialist, the other as an assistant coach on this basketball team. So I think that's what it's going to be. I don't think Nurse is going to lean on him, if at all. I don't think so. So I don't think you have to worry about that. Now it's just the whole deal of what the roster looks like and how many numbers are on the roster and what their flexibility can look like.
Yeah, look, Jared McCain got his Kyle Lowry internship mentorship program last year, right? So I would think with the year, you got enough of the tips and tricks and all that. I would feel great if it was like Kyle Lowry joining Nick Nurse's coaching staff, right? Like, I think he's got plenty of wisdom to pass on to these guys.
I think he essentially is doing that. He's just wearing a uniform by doing that.
Well, like when we're talking about,
I know.
Look at they're at a shortage of wings. They're at a shortage of forwards, right? To the point that they signed a two-way guy in Jabari Walker, albeit a good two-way guy who we think could have gotten a standard deal potentially. But to the point that Jabari Walker might be a guy who plays early in the season, right? Like could be in the rotation as a two-way guy because of what they lack positionally on this roster. And you're still bringing back like another guard.
Another guard.
It's another guard when you don't need guards, and you especially don't need small, older guards. I get no one would be happier than me if Kyle Lowry could, in this final season, ride off into the sunset. The Sixers are champions. Like, there's a hometown pride element, all that stuff. But I also see what the roster is. And we know too, Joel will miss time. Paul George will miss time. Like, this is a team more than a lot of others that needs the depth to make up for stars missing games and stars missing weeks, months, whatever it is. And I think the way that the roster is set up right now, you're just not managing the spots correctly. I hope that he's able to just be at the end of the bench and offering all that veteran wisdom, and it all works out okay. It is very uninspiring to me.
I know, and it is for a lot of people in the chat. We'll get Derek's thoughts tomorrow when we return at 3 p.m. to recap the Sixers and the Oklahoma City Thunder, Game 2 of the Summer Sixers in Utah against the Oklahoma City Thunder for the Salt Lake City Summer League. And we'll talk about them tomorrow. We'll get Derek's thoughts a little bit more extensively on this as well tomorrow for the emergency pod of Kyle Lowry back for season number 20. And he's doing so once again with the Philadelphia 76ers. Who knew that Kyle Lowry would re-sign before Quentin Grimes? We all did.
Devon, do we want to do any positive Lowry talk here before we or is it just I'm negative about it and we saw?
Well, I did go to positive side. I went to positive side saying, you know what, he's going to be a good mentor. He's still going to be a leader on the bench, and he's going to the mentorship program, as you talked about, not only as it continues for Jared McCain, but also lending some of that wisdom to VJ Edgecombe in his first year as well. So I think that's where it goes. So that is part of the positivity of it, that the guy's going to get his 20th at home, familiar, very comfortable, and he gets to finish off his season in his hometown team's uniform for the Philadelphia 76ers. So here we go.
I genuinely, earnestly hope that he's able to have a successful final season here in Philadelphia, because it'd be an awesome story. I love that he wanted to play in Philly his last 2 years in the league, right? Like, that's cool. There are plenty of guys who don't want to come back to Philly or don't want to come back to their hometown in general, right? For whatever reason. So I love that he cares about it. I love that he's involved with the Sixers. I just would have preferred it to be in a different role. That's all.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about it more tomorrow at 3 p.m. here on the PHLY Sixers podcast, an emergency podcast today for Kyle Lowry returning to the Sixers on a one-year deal. It was all presented by Rothman Orthopedics. Visit rothmanortho.com/PHLY if you need to go get checked out. All right, for Kyle, I'm Devon. Thank you to Andrew for producing the show at such a emergency time on this Monday. Kyle Lowry back for one more year for the Philadelphia 76ers while we await Quentin Grimes and a resolution there. We at least get to talk about Eric Gordon, Andre Drummond, and Kyle Lowry back with the Philadelphia 76ers. So everybody stay tuned once again, 3 p.m. tomorrow right here on our feed. And we'll talk plenty about the Summer Sixers against the OKC Thunder tonight, and a little bit more on Kyle Lowry returning for one more season. Everybody enjoy the rest of your night. We'll talk to you tomorrow at 3 right here on the PHLY Sixers podcast. See ya.
We all silly like the mayor.